Good afternoon, Tigers. Welcome to today's Tiger webinar featuring the topic esports, changing what it means to be an athlete. I'm John Rodabaugh, Executive Director of Alumni Relations, and I am your moderator for today's session. We are happy to have you join us and would like to extend our best wishes to all of our alumni and RIT community members as we continue to weather this new environment during the pandemic. For all the alumni joining us today, please know that the Office of Alumni Relations is available to help you with a variety of needs, including new virtual content, learning opportunities, and networking career assistance. We especially encourage everyone to connect with the RIT Alumni Association social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where you will find up-to-date communications and opportunities to connect with the university and to other alumni in your region and your industry. Those links are found in the chat box. The chat box can be opened by clicking on the chat tab at the right of your webinar window. Many in our RIT family have asked how they can help our students and the university as we respond to the pandemic, and we are very grateful for those offers. There are two ways that you can help. First, our new graduates and current students are seeking positions for full-time careers and co-ops. Many of these positions have been delayed or canceled entirely. If your company is hiring or would consider adding a co-op post, please contact Chris Steeler in RIT's Career Services Office and allow her to post that position in our career system. Her information is in the chat box as well. In addition, there is now an unprecedented need for financial aid scholarships for current and incoming students. If you are able and willing to help our current students, please consider making a gift at the link in the chat box. Thank you. We want to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the presentation tools. If you are joining from a remote location and are currently signed into your company's VPN, we encourage you to close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of your transmission. The webinar platform is secure without VPN. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions can be entered in the chat box at any time throughout the discussion. We will make every effort to address all of your comments and questions throughout the webinar. You are joining this event using broadcast audio. If you wish to dial in by phone, dial-in information is provided in the chat box. Live captioning is also being provided, and you can find that link to access the live chat in the chat box as well. This webinar will be recorded and made available, complete with captions, in approximately 1 week following today's event. All participants will receive an email with the link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box as well, and we will do our best to get you the appropriate answers. Now on to our webinar, Esports, Changing What It Means to Be an Athlete. We are so pleased to welcome Chad Weeden, Director of Esports and CyberSecurity Range at RIT. Prior to his current position, Chad worked as a system administrator for 15 years and taught streaming media courses, eventually becoming the assistant director for our School of Interactive Games and Media. He launched Intramural and Club Esports at RIT, which now has community members numbering in the thousands, including athletes, coaches, managers, casters, production, technical, and e-board teams. Joining Chad is two-time alumnus Tyler Schrodt, who founded the Electronic Gaming Federation in 2015 and has grown the organization from a single collection of high school esports teams to a full-scale federation across collegiate, high school, and youth esports ecosystems. Tyler started as a Counter-Strike 1.6 player, then as a team manager and a tournament organizer before attending college at RIT, where he worked as a part of residence life and served on the Institute's conduct board. In addition to his position at EGF, Tyler serves as an advisor to PowerSpike and mental health nonprofit Rise Above the Disorder. We're very excited to have both of you joining us to talk esports today. And with that, I will give the floor to Chad to kick us off.
Thanks, John. And thanks, everyone, for coming out to learn a little bit about RIT Esports. Hopefully, we got some good information here and maybe some exciting news about things to come later on in the presentation. So at first, I'm going to start off with a little bit about the history of esports. You know, I guess maybe some of you have watched maybe a Twitch stream or caught it, you know, some of our social media on Twitter or Facebook. But my guess is very few of you know what it actually looked like to launch this program. So I'm gonna try to do my best to give you guys a little bit about the history of RIT Esports, and then we're gonna kind of get into the current state of things and all the opportunities that are being offered for RIT Esports athletes and people associated with the administrative structures. So the first bullet here is at the beginning, one path. And really, that's meaningful because there was not just one path. There was many paths that all kind of led together, and I'll get into that. And then we'll talk a little bit about the 101 conversations that happened and the great convergence, if you will, and what's going on now and then in the future. So it was sort of an interesting day in fall of 2014. I had a conversation with Tona Henderson, who was the director of the School of Interactive Games and Media at the time. And I just said, hey, I got an idea. I think esports is going to be really big, and I think it's going to take off. I think it will work well with the School of Interactive Games and Media. I think there will be some research opportunities, and I could see a lot of growth potential in this area. And to that, she simply responded, "Great, get on that." And that is literally where the path started, was a conversation that simple. So the initial thank you really goes out to Tona Henderson, who really kind of gave the nod and let me pursue this aspect. But that's only one step, right? There was a lot of initial conversations. Some I wasn't even privy to. But what I do know is the outcomes of some of those conversations. And one is with our dean, Dean of Golisano College of Computing and Information Sciences, Ann Hakey. She really understood what we were trying to do with esports. And, I really can't say enough about what she did to help us along. Any resource that we asked for, getting up and going, using labs and facilities, she was always there for us to help with that. And even today, that is really why RIT Esports is housed in the College of Computing. 101 conversations, yes. David Schwartz, he's a real fun guy, director of the School of Interactive Games and Media. And he had just started, he transitioned from Tona to become the director. And he wanted to go out and get to know all the different deans and VPs and all the administrative structure around campus. This was sort of a mission of his, is to really bring games to everybody, really. And it was interesting because on all these meetings, there was at least 10 minutes, if not more, sometimes it consumed most of the meeting, of esports and where we thought it was going to go and what we thought it could become at RIT. So yeah, we talked to administrators and deans and VPs and literally everyone else. Anyone who would walk in the door, some people who did not walk in the door and they stayed out in the hallway, we still grabbed them and we still talked to them. We're like, esports, this is what it's about. It's really exciting and it's gonna be big, and we were filling stadiums and all this kind of great stuff. And what we were doing is educating people because, back in 2014 and 2015, not a lot of people really understood esports or where it could go or where it was in, Southeast Asia or Europe and how these things were already being built up. So it was an educational process. And in all honesty, 101, that's probably far fewer than what actually happened. And then something really kind of special came because, and I'm calling it the Great Convergence, but, I don't know. What happened is we came to the realization is we had this great idea, but we needed a group of students to work with. And we were out kind of hunting. It's like, well, we know people are playing games, but, we need to find a team, someone who's good at it, someone who's got a passion and drive. And it really didn't take that long. And we met, actually, it was Jessica Bayless, the associate director for the School of Interactive Games and Media. She introduced me to Rachel and Luna, and they were actually playing Heroes of the Storm. And they were pretty good. They were kind of like this top 32, top 64-ish type team. And, considering, the number of colleges across the U.S., that was really good. And we're like, oh, we got something. We got a good team here, and, we can launch our program with this, and this will be fantastic. And then I was introduced shortly thereafter, I think within the week, to Peter Lamb and Evan and the rest of the guys. And that's when it really dawned on me, while, the faculty and the staff, we had our own vision and we had our own thoughts about esports. the student body was already doing some of this stuff. They already had goals. They were spinning up teams. They knew what they wanted in a lot of aspects in terms of structure. They wanted it to be elite, and really it was a kind of a fateful meeting with Tyler, who's joining us today. You know, I'll kind of flip over to the next slide, right? And I hunted down the very first email and the first meeting that I had with Tyler. It was Friday, November 6th, 2015. Because if it wasn't that exact meeting, and it was really just kind of my memory here, it was a meeting shortly thereafter where we brought students in on it. And it wasn't just faculty and staff and you know, Tyler sitting in the room, but we had students there as well. And we were discussing esports and what it could potentially be at RIT. And you know, Tyler, he came to us and he had all these you know, fantastic ideas, like, oh, we're going to create a league and it's going to be great and we're going to have all these features, and he'll definitely get into it. And I'm sitting there thinking, I got a team now. And you know, and I have students, and you know, and let's see how we can merge these two things together. And you know, and what is that going to look like? And you know, if some of you guys have followed RIT Esports over the years, it's you know, you may have seen me and Tyler kind of pop up now and then. We've done conferences and meetings and alumni balls and events like LSI and things like that. It seems like every year we end up on a panel session or something, and kind of pushing the mission forward. Shortly after that, we had a meeting with Dr. Johnson, the VP of Student Affairs, and she brought her whole team. And one of the people at that team was Greg Moss, and he ran Intramurals at the time. And after the meeting, where we sort of discussed, you know, what esports might look at RIT, and you know, doing our sort of educational bit that what we were trying to do with everybody. I remember Jessica Bayless and Greg Moss, they were kind of having this conversation, like, Chad, come on over here. And I'm like, okay, yeah, what's going on? And Greg's like, you know, why don't we just do intramural esports at RIT? We'll just kick it off in the fall and see what happens. And I'm like, what a fantastic idea. And now, not only do I have a team, but we're going to have a real program at RIT, and it's done by this hallway conversation after a meeting. But that's really how that idea launched. It was a very simplistic conversation. Lots of meetings followed, obviously. We had to work out the details, logistics, all the technical aspects, compute facilities and things of that nature. But the idea was just, you know, someone really understanding what we were trying to do and saying, yeah, let's make it happen. So, you know, I got to give a shout out to Scott Barrow here as well. He's written a lot of stories about esports over the years, and this one was in October 20th. It looks like of 2015. So I'll start with the big picture in the middle there. So I'm like, oh, RIT Esports as a club launches, and I need a RIT Esports logo, and I want to put the logo on the slide. And I'm like, you know what? I went out and I have some images, but I just kind of did a Google search because I was kind of flipping around, and this one came up, and I'm like, yeah, that's my logo picture. I don't even know if Dr. Munson knows we have this picture. I'm assuming so because it's online now. But you know, I know he's been working and supporting esports, and it's fantastic. And the students thought of the idea of gifting him this jersey, and we had a mechanism to make that happen. So it was really cool, and we got a picture of it. But before we launched RIT Esports, you know, we had that initial team, and you know, it was months of really figuring out and fine-tuning details, and really kind of going back to that great convergence of ideas. You know, some of the initial ideas is I'm like, oh, the programs needs to be big and it needs to be inclusive. We need to bring everybody in. And the students are like, no, it needs to be elite, and only the top players can come in. And you know, what does the structure look like, and how do we create it? So you know, there was months there where it was nothing but us writing up documents and having meetings. And there was some gameplay, and that was fun. But a lot of it was a lot of really, you know, nose to the grindstone, and the students flushed that out. So there's a lot of credit given to them. on kind of really structuring how RIT Esports looks like and how it works. That's what those first few months between that 2015 and our quote unquote launch was, us just trying to figure out what that structure was. And so I'll kind of real quick here, because it was sort of this explosive in nature over the last 4 years after we kind of launched. We've gone through 4 presidents, which means we have elections like, you know, any other student organization would. And if you paid attention to one of the earlier slides, you'll see some names there that kind of ring bells. You know, it kicked off with Peter Lamb, and he came to us from EGS, Electronic Gaming Society, and he wanted it. He had his own pathway and what he thought about esports. Evan Hirsch and Joseph Farrell, they were interesting because, if I'm not mistaken, they actually shared kind of a dorm floor, and they would kind of converse, and they had this whole plan of how they wanted to kick off esports. So it was a completely separate path from, I think, what Peter initially had in mind. So and I'm guessing there's a lot more stories from a lot more students, and all these stories kind of come together ultimately once we really launched the program, of everyone with all these separate efforts to really bring esports to RIT. A lot of people kind of understood this, and it was just, you know, making that happen that really launched it. Once we started, it was unbelievable. You know, the first couple of years, the only real recruiting we did was, you know, at the student club fair. We kind of wedged our way in. I don't even know if we were really allowed there, but we did. And, you know, we set up a table and we're like, hey, come join RIT Esports. And, you know, the college was really nice because, you know, Ann, Dr. Hickey was helping us whenever she could, and she let us put a table there, and, you know, like, hey, RIT Esports is really cool. And that first year we had hundreds of students, hundreds. We didn't expect as many as we did. And in all honesty, it was a little rough because we didn't have jobs or things for hundreds of students to do. And you know, give credit where credit's due. You know, I think it was actually Evan who was like, oh, we need this big Discord server, and, you know, let's build this out, and then we could actually talk to hundreds of people all at the same time. And they created all these channels and administrative structures in that, in order for the students to be able to communicate with each other. So even though they weren't necessarily having an active production meeting or development meeting, they could still be involved in the community. And we got smarter each year that this has progressed, of coming up with very specific things, because we kind of have an idea of how many people are going to be showing up now, that they can do, and action items that they can take it. And I'll get to that. I know I'm kind of glossing over on it, but that's a little purposeful. And notice I haven't even talked about the athletes yet. Now I will talk about the athletes, right? So there's hundreds of students, but most of them are administrative structure in nature, which means they have this deep, passion about esports. They want to be involved in esports. They see the larger picture. They see the blossoming industry. But, you know, maybe they don't see themselves as that elite gamer status where they can compete at the highest level in the collegiate world. But we have those too. At this point, you know, we grew from Heroes of the Storm, and a couple other games quickly came on, you know, hand in hand with that, all the way up to 15 different games. And kind of the process that we did was, you know, to be both inclusive but also elite, is we modeled ourselves very similar from traditional athletics, and bringing those that model of a tryout system in, and then creating a tier system for people can move up. So and that's worked out really well for us. Our social media and our Twitter, you know, thousands of people at this point. Structure-wise, it's actually pretty. It's both organic and solidified, right? So every year we seem to change a little bit, but, you know, ultimately there's a production team, a community team, a casting team, development team. Those are, you know, the people who write the code for the web pages and that sort of stuff, and then the actual teams. And there's actually when we first kicked off, like with our production team, we had so many people there that it was a little hard, because it's like they have different backgrounds. Some of them are good at the tools, some are not. There was an educational process. So eventually we even have tryouts to some level, for some of these internal teams as well. But the key here is it's organic and it's ever changing. Because we understand the market changes, and we want to be able to move with that. On the right-hand side, I don't expect anyone to be able to read that. That's kind of purposeful. There's some secret sauce built into that, but that is actually RIT Esports. That is the model. That's the structure. That's the full breakdown of the organization in reality. And you know, I had to create this just because I couldn't wrap my head around every single aspect of the day, and you know, where the different pieces were. So you know, I think from the graph onto itself, you can kind of see the size and scale of it at this point. And here's the thing, we're really good. I'm not really saying that lightly. You know, over the last couple of years, we've actually won 5 national championships. And I'm going with 5. And everyone's looking at that top line. They're like, wait, drop zone? Really? Drop zone? What's that? No, I'm not moving it. It's staying there. That was our first big championship. It's a small game. They had a big tournament. The students won thousands of dollars through that. And it was our first success. And I will never take that away from them. And internally, we're all like, yeah, drop zone. That's it. That's where we started. So it's kind of fun internally. But, you know, we got some big games up there as well. Dota 2, 2-time national championships. And that's nationwide. And that's really North America, because there's also Canadian teams that plays in that league, in which I'm going to tap Tyler here very, very shortly. He's waiting ever so patiently. He's like, come on, my turn, man, my turn. And you know, PUBG and Hearthstone. Hearthstone was the big time this year. You know, last spring they were top 4, really kind of springboarded themselves up, and then they took it down. So that great little trophy there. I got to find a place for it. Right now it's sitting in my office on my desk. It's like, we need a trophy case. We need something. But yeah, we have full backing of the Institute now. And you know, I got to give a special shout out to Dr. Waters. He really, I think, really understands esports at RIT, what it is, where it's going, and it was really him that facilitated to make to allow us to create a state-of-the-art esports training facility. And it's sort of interesting, you know. I'd sort of debated, well, do I want to put this picture up? I'd sort of been kind of keeping this one under wraps a little bit, but okay. I think enough students have taken pictures and posted it on social media at this point that it is what it is. So I'll talk about it. I'll talk a little bit about it. I'll talk a little bit about the design and the features and the thought process that went into it. And the first thing I want to start with is, you know, this was a collaborative effort. You know, I can't even remember how many different students I had in my office where we bounced ideas off from each other about the best way to create a true training facility, right? A true place where people could practice. We knew from the get-go that we didn't want just a place to play games. They can do that in the dorm room. We wanted a place to mold top-end players. And the way we went about doing that is understanding that it's one team at a time. We picked 6 stations for the clients simply because Overwatch, and they have 6 players. Most games are 5. There are some like Rocket League with 3.
Oh, it looks like we lost. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Did you lose Chad?
I think we might have lost Chad there for a second. While we wait for Chad to get logged back in here, Tyler, I want to turn the floor over to you and have you tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing with the Electronic Gaming Federation and how certainly how that's evolving for you and what you're doing.
Yeah, as Chad mentioned, it was something that we, the team that started EGF all started at RIT, and it all came because part of the experience that we had, growing up in esports and then ultimately participating in RIT's community, both from the gaming side as well as everything else, kind of stemmed from working from res life and then ultimately transitioning into understanding where things were going to go in the future, what we could build out of it, and starting down that path of understanding what it really meant to make the claim of, we're going to go out and create these leagues and these opportunities for students and teams and all that kind of stuff, with a very safe environment, kind of giving us a lot of the feedback, as Chad sort of alluded to, and he talked about the email and some of those early meetings, that it was really going to take to get something like this going. So EGF's core premise was to create this intercollegiate league for esports with the same type of rules and regulations and opportunities and things like that that come from the traditional athletics side of things. And a lot of that came from working in res life and in student conduct and understanding how important student engagement was. Understanding obviously from my background in gaming how important and impactful that was. And then as we were talking in a chat about everything that was happening on campus, that sort of helped to shape what was going on across the rest of the country as well. So now, at this point, as you mentioned in the introduction, EGF is a combination of several different leagues, ranging from collegiate, which is where our primary focus is, to our high school league, where we've been able to partner with the Walt Disney Company on building out programming for high school students across the country. And more recently, the introduction of youth programs for folks ages 8 to 14, where we partner with groups like Perfect Game, for example, in the baseball world, to kind of bring esports into that world. So our focus as a company has been a combination of governance and what it takes to run leagues that look very similar to what you find in traditional sports, but also spending a lot of time working with all of our institutions to kind of help them through the same process that Chad just spent all that time describing, because esports is so new to so many people, and there's often so much excitement about it, but a really large gap between that excitement and the ability to execute or knowing what the plan is to get there. So we spent a lot of our time kind of walking through that process, helping people look at what esports means in terms of competition, education, social impact, things like accessibility, inclusivity, and diversity, and mental health and wellness, all being kind of main pillars in that element. And then also from a business perspective, making sure that as campuses are thinking about, especially in the current era, how budgets look, where the resources are going to come to maintain these programs over a period of time. How do you make sure that these programs are sustainable and built out in a way that's going to make it really easy to continue to grow the programs in the way that they're meant to be? So now we work with a whole host of universities, all Division I, with 48 of them competing with us during this last spring season. And the focus of working with all those schools has been to sort of understand what they need, what they want, what they're doing, and then help standardize and support that. So RIT obviously has been a huge part of that, both from the fact that that's where I came from, but also in just the things that Chad comes up with, as well as all the students that are involved in it, the experiments they run, and the different ways that they look at policy has had huge influence on how we run things. So it's been an amazing opportunity to be able to say that I get to play video games as part of my job, and I'm obviously very proud to have the opportunity to have been a part of RIT coming into this.
Look at that! I'm back. I even exist. No, seriously, that whole next slide was you. It was and I'm kind of so I want to kind of put something out there, and I know Tyler just addressed some of it, but right now the league structure within esports is the Wild West. It's some of it's organized, some of it's done through developers, some of it is literally students in their dorm rooms creating leagues on the fly. And I say that, but you got to put that in a little bit of context, because them being able to do that unto itself is amazing. I'll kind of framework it a little bit. Contemplate, a student group having the network connections to bring in a half a dozen or a dozen colleges, not at an official level, but they know the people at those colleges that play those games, and they can bring teams in to actually have a tournament structure online. But that creates problems. That creates some big problems. One of the biggest things that I've run into with all these different types of league structures, and really what's drawn me to EGF is I wanted to answer a simple question: who are you playing and when? Just who are you playing? Tell me when you're playing Cornell. Tell me you're doing it on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Great, I can advertise that. I can get people to come watch our Twitch stream. They want to be able to see what you guys are doing, but I can't answer that question, not in a meaningful way. And that makes it very difficult. And that's sort of the growing pains of esports, I think, through the collegiate market is, coming up with a meaningful schedule and then actually having people stick to it. And on one hand, there is the understanding, I think, that they're students, they have classes, they have tests. You got to get a little give and a little take, and projects come up, and they should be able to move their stuff around. And then on the other hand, you think to yourself, well, traditional athletics have figured this out for a long time, and part of that is their students are given a certain status. If there's a game on Friday night, they can actually talk to and negotiate with their professors and come up with a makeup date or whatever, right? Come up with some type of solution. So that's one of the things, I look at EGF, and, we sat on these dozens, I think that's fair to say dozens, right? Meetings with
Yeah.
colleges. I think it's fair to say, coming up with rules and organizations and structures, to facilitate being an answer, questions of that nature. So I'm just kind of curious, some of your thoughts on that, Tyler, in terms of creating league structures, getting colleges to buy in, negotiating with the students to make sure they're showing up on time, and that the games actually launch when you want them to, because and we I don't know, maybe I'm tipping the hand a little bit here. You talk about we've had discussions a little bit about ESPN, and in order to be able to do things like that, you have to have the people show up on time. So I don't know if you want to take a shot at that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's definitely one of those fundamental things where you're trying to think about how do you grow esports, right? And then how do you bring that to people that maybe you've heard the word, but they don't really know what that means. And the best way to show them that is to literally show them a stream. And then, like you said, in order to be able to promote that and to be able to not, look kind of foolish if you say, hey, it's going to happen at 6 o'clock, and then they show up to watch it on Twitch and then it's not happening. Like, those are one of the fundamental aspects of what makes the growth of esports, a really big challenge, and why that's so important. I mean, I think people at this point probably understand that esports is really big, and maybe they know that from the pro scene, maybe they've started to pay attention to college, or maybe they just see it on campus. But it can be really challenging to find that and make it feel real. And so even getting started and educating people, that becomes a really foundational element of it. And then if you're thinking about the growth of esports, like one of the main things about traditional sports is, like, if you look at college football, right, that owns Saturday on the day of the week. So if you've never watched a football game in your life, but you're interested in college football, if you turn on ESPN or whatever on a Saturday, you're going to see football. And that ability to attract new fans, continue to educate people, and then ultimately build sustainability and consistency for the sake of growing the business side of it, super important. And even just thinking about for the players themselves, like right now in the chat with Brett, you're thinking about how frustrating it is to be a student to put in all of these hours in preparation for whatever this match is. And then you either end up with a forfeit because the other team didn't show up, which is great because they make it further in the bracket, but you're there to play, not to, forfeit your way to the championships. Or you have this opportunity where, it's part of the bigger league perspective. You're telling, people about it. And then also that's not there. And the same concept applies in high school, right? Where it's parents, especially, are trying to tune in to watch their kid play. And if they don't have the understanding of when it is, where it's going to be, the consistency of it, the understanding that they know that product is going to be stable and consistent throughout that whole process, it's really hard to build a following from that, which means it's also hard to build economic opportunities. Like when you're talking about ESPN, if we like esports event on ESPN and other networks, right, which is great. But in order to be able to do that, you have to, as an organizer, know that you can rely on your teams to be there at the time and place where they need to be. Because if you're going live on television, like you can't reschedule the match last minute like you can on Twitch. Like it's got to be there, and so it's kind of part of that larger movement towards maturation of esports, and how to say everything that we've done to get it to this point has been so important. And now we get to take those next steps to sort of formalize the aspects that need to be added to, and then ultimately turn that into something that's going to be a much stronger base for the future.
Tyler, we have a question here in the chat talking about the importance of broadcasts of these matches and how important that is. But I'll expand that a little bit and just ask, what kind of attention are we seeing in this, during the pandemic with all these other traditional athletic sports being, kind of shelved for a while? Is that had a really tremendous impact on esports?
Absolutely. And I'm sure Chad can speak to this, and their Twitch channel is actually pretty big, especially in the college sense. Like the broadcast elements of it are super important because it makes it tangible, and being able to see and root for your team, or like I said, just come into something and understand what it is that people are talking about is such a powerful tool, because you're able to illustrate what's going on. You're allowed to, bring in the broadcasters that are a part of that moment to, hype up everything that's happening. And you may not have any idea what's going on in the game itself, but to be a part of that environment becomes really exciting. And when you think about the current situation of not being able to go out and participate in traditional sports, or even more broadly, just large gatherings, the ability to go in and be a part of Twitch chat, or to just experience that community in the way that esports was really born out of. It's such a cool way to bring people into a community that we've known for decades at this point, but it's still really new for people. So I think it's been a great way to take advantage of the moment where there's an absence of sort of what you consider the traditional mainstream entertainment product and traditional sports. And then the attention has shifted to esports. Obviously with us, we moved things online and we made events bigger as a result of that. But at the pro level, you see things like NASCAR, where like the races are virtual, and the same thing with F1, and NBA players and soccer players and all sorts of different folks kind of transitioning into this, and reliance for content as well as opportunities to kind of fill that gap. So my hope for the future, certainly based on that, is we've had a moment to introduce esports to so many new people, that as we kind of go back to the introduction of traditional sports into the mainstream, and everything starts to reopen, that you have a new group of people that are consistent fans.
Yeah, there, and I'll just kind of add to that thought line a little bit. It's sort of interesting. Once I speak specifically to RIT, right? One of the things that I was doing is everything was we're kind of in limbo if things are going to shut down, if they're not, what is it going to look like? I'm sitting there, I'm emailing Lou Spiatti, the athletic director, and I'm like, what are you guys going to do in traditional sports? And my thought behind it was, well, maybe I'll mirror what the traditional sports are doing as far as precautions and things of that nature. And of course, as we all know, they did close. I mean, that's people went home. But esports was different, and it didn't follow that same model, even though that was my knee-jerk reaction. I'm going to follow the traditional sports model, because when those players went home, they didn't have to stop, right? They're at home, that they still have their gaming PCs and machines to one level or another. Maybe it's not the same ones that we have in our practice facility or whatever, but they still have the capability to play. And they continued, and they had some amazing experiences. And actually, Tyler and EGF and Microsoft actually partnered up, and they gave some of those amazing opportunities to the students. And actually, it's you guys sort of worked on this, so maybe I'll let you talk about the entire experiential learning aspects and some of the opportunities that the students actually had while in quarantine. They weren't traveling, but they still had the ability to go out and do things virtually.
Yeah, I thought that was probably the coolest thing to be able to expand on. And I think as we were thinking about the programming that was connected to all the competition we were running, consistent philosophy that we've tried to bring to it is competition is easily the most marketable component of it, depending on the community you're talking about. But as you mentioned earlier in the presentation, Chad, like not everybody's there to be on the team. Some people are more excited about being a part of the broadcast team, or they want to work in esports, or there's any number of paths that they might want to take that's adjacent to what's going on. And so we were really fortunate kind of walking into the spring with everything going on, that not only was sports kind of on pause, but a lot of the world was shifting their priorities and understanding like where the resources could go. And out of that was born a partnership with Microsoft, with RIT in Syracuse, to be able to bring in students to like be a part of both a webinar series that was focused on introducing people at a high level to what esports offered from a career development perspective, a lot of the things that are happening there, and then from a more experiential component of what we were building with the GF Power series, so like bring students in, be a part of broadcast, kind of highlight some of the work that they were already doing. And that ended up being a sort of an experiment, if you will, for what's going to continue to be expanded in the fall, where now we're starting to work with institutions on a broader level to say, you have a school of journalism, or you have something related to media and broadcast. So here's a cool way that we can now take esports, which is pretty low barrier to entry focused, make it a part of the curriculum, or at least provide the opportunity for credit, create information around internships and other opportunities, and ultimately, focus on a path towards full employment. So, kind of the inflection point for a lot of this, certainly was looking at the silver lining of dealing with COVID, but also this continued reinforcement of how important it is to make sure that no matter where students are, no matter what the circumstances they're dealing with are, that you still have an opportunity to engage them with campus, and then obviously provide those meaningful opportunities. And so I was really excited to see this sort of, as the first step of everything that's gonna be happening.
Yeah, actually, is there a way to bring that presentation back up? I think when I went down, it went down too, because there is a slide I sort of want to show, and it kind of speaks right to it. And I'll come back to this one, but it's really this one that I think we're talking about right now, which is, the idea, even under tough times, right? Going back to the question being posed, that you can still have a meaningful experience, a meaningful collegiate experience, right? What you just kind of think about, what kind of experience does esports give you? There's a sense of team, there's a sense of community, there's events and competitions, and people are networking with each other and talking about common interests and goals. And this, before I got disconnected there, I was talking a little bit about the notion of entrepreneurship, where students are trying to actually develop their own esports related businesses unto themselves, right? And I think one of the things that might be happening during the fall, depending on how everything pans out, is esports, for the students that choose to get involved in it, they will still have these opportunities to have that meaningful college experience, still be a part of that community, and still feel that energy. Because I don't think the college experience is just I went to class, I learned stuff, I got a grade, yay, go me. I think that's part of it. It's an important part of it. But I think a lot of it is also exploring these different opportunities. And to that extent, grateful to Tyler and his crew and Microsoft, and to give some of those opportunities out to the students, and bringing them in to do some of that. The picture here, for those who are kind of wondering what that's about, that's actually our RIT's Hearthstone team playing in the national championship. which they want. But it's an experience, right? This one is a physical event, but it doesn't always have to be a physical event. The students can get, you guys can get a lot out of, even at a distance, even through a digital environment, as I guess where I'm going. And that's sort of that whole line on the bottom is, presenting opportunities, right? And I think that's part of it, and that's part of why I'm drawn to the EGF to a degree, is because I see the opportunities that are being provided to through that league, which I think is pretty neat. Not to just blow smoke at you, Tyler. But yeah, no, it's good stuff, man. I'm going to go back a little bit because I think this is also important, and maybe I think you can speak to it a little bit, because we were talking a little bit about structure of esports, and there's a reason why I think so many students are drawn to different organizational structures within esports, because they recognize that we're actually launching an industry, right? Or it's already been launched and it's growing. That's probably a better way to frame it. I'll talk a little bit about the pictures here. These actually, most of them here, the three of them, are from LSI, which is a large event that we had not this June, but last June. We're only 4 days into this June. But it was really neat, to watch it unfold. There was a rock concert with Lou Graham there. We had RIT Esports versus Splice, professional team in esports. We had Rocket League. There was all these different aspects going on, but at the same time, it didn't take a lot to sit back and say, look at all the jobs, look at all the opportunities. And when you go out and you talk to industry, it's I'm going to keep talking, although I was going to pass it over to Tyler because I'm not sure if he's there. Did he disconnect?
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Oh, you're there. Okay. Okay. I just didn't know. I didn't know if same thing happened to you as it happened to me. But Tyler, if can you talk a little bit about the different career opportunities, the domain knowledge that people have associated with like their technical degrees, and how they can bring that to esports to kind of propel themselves forward?
Yeah, of course. I think the analogy to sports again comes up here, because if you think about the traditional sports industry, the things that you see the most often are obviously like the players and the coaches, and then sometimes like a general manager or some people that are involved in the roster decisions. But behind the scenes, you have everybody that's responsible for everything from making a stadium operate to the recruitment, the scouts, to the production of media, to all these different elements of technology and statistics, and all these different aspects of what it takes to understand how to drive everything forward. And while esports is still very much in its infancy in terms of the ability to support a similarly robust structure, the seed foundations of it are still there. So one of the big focuses of the collegiate community that has been really exciting to be a part of is the experience of having like a sports management program or any number of other things that already exist on campus. Already provides that blueprint of, we know that these things are either happening right now or they're going to be happening in esports, and so how do we use those existing best practices and opportunities to inform students in the best possible way to go out and be competitive for jobs, or as you mentioned before, start their own thing.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it comes back to how you talked about structuring a program on campus, where you're able to give guidance and direction as the director and the full-time staff person, but you're able to kind of guide and support students that are able to take those initiatives and say, I'm very passionate about creating like memes on Twitter, and RIT is particularly good at that, especially when it comes to something with Rutgers.
It's an art form, man. It's an art form.
So those sorts of things are, really like fundamental parts of what it takes to create a brand and to be a part of an organization that cares about that type of thing, and ultimately makes things more visible. So you have all these parallels that are happening. Like we certainly see it from a company, and we selfishly have been working with all of our colleges with the idea of, if we can help those programs get to a point where we can consistently find value in them, it's a very great place for us to recruit from and to build it out. And then we've also found that when you think about the inclusiveness of esports and gaming, the really cool thing about it is esports is gaming in general are pretty universal across most backgrounds. But you do find certain disparities in things like gender or ethnicity or elements of it that are often kind of broken down by the game that you're talking about. And so when we bring in opportunities to be managers or coaches or analysts or social media people or broadcasts or any of these other elements of it, we found that it's a really great way to engage people that, again, maybe don't care as much about the games, but they're really passionate about the project. And you end up with a much more diverse group of people that are getting involved in something that's really important to them. And for some people, it's the first thing that they're getting involved with on either in high school or in college, just because other things just don't speak to them very well. So there's a lot of really cool things that are both happening to propel the industry, the opportunities, certainly from a career development perspective, but are also having this more subtle, or in some cases more overt impact on what it means for the individual communities, both in terms of its inclusivity, but also the value of it.
Yeah, no, it's I like that you went there about inclusivity, and we struggle, in terms of trying to get a good ratio, if you will. Some of this is like, what's your numbers? What's your numbers? And it's like, we recruit the best way we can, but trying to get, good gender ratios on the athlete side is hard. And we have some fantastic female players, but when I say I got 160, it's like, more guys. But on the flip side, and this is where I think it's really important to know, in management and the major structures that actually make the organization go, the leadership elements. I don't know. Maybe she's on. If you're on, Hillary, maybe you can pipe up and say hi. But I'm really excited. Every president that we've had so far, they've all had a vision, right? They've all had a direction, and they steered the ship a little differently. And I'm really kind of curious on where she's going to steer the ship. But it's creating those opportunities. And I'll make one more shout out, and then maybe he's on, I don't know, but Ron Dodge has been with us from the beginning, and he's a game design and development student, but he's also a wonderful artist, great marketing ideas. He's actually the one who created the jersey concepts that you see. A lot of the marketing stuff that we have, that's all student created. We're going to put out, and Ron's the lead on that by far. But in talking to different companies, the one thing that keeps holding true, if it's Splice, or if it's Riot Games or what have you, they're always looking for people not only with technical knowledge but with domain knowledge. Right? They need to know the domain of esports and have the technical knowledge. I had conversations with Riot, and it was interesting in the sense that initially when they wanted to do some of their casting of their big games, they bring in these big sports casters, and they're like, oh, they got great voices, they got great energy, they're it. These are the people that got to do this for us. And they quickly figured out that they don't know anything about video games, let alone the games that they're actually trying to cast. Which is really hard, because you can be the greatest talker in the world, but if you don't know what you're talking about, it's you're going to lose your audience real quick.
Yeah.
So quickly they got rid of those people, and they're like, no, we need casters. We need people who have been embedded into the community for a very long time, can also communicate, and those are the people that we need to cast our shows. Splice was a little different, and they're like, we need technical artists, we need people with production skills, but they also have to understand the vision of what we're going for, right? They need that domain knowledge to go with it. And I think programs, and not just RIT, but across the nation, as they develop, really have an opportunity to put forth the thought leaders that are going to drive this next industry, right? You have the NFL and the Professional Sports League, but now we have the Professional Esports League, right? And right now, as students are going through these programs, they are going to be the generation where this truly, I think, has a real chance of surpassing even traditional sports, and becoming that large and being the leaders of that when it gets there. It's really good stuff. And we've looking at the clock here real quick. It's 1:56. I don't know. Did we have any questions here? I didn't really save much time, but if we do, we can definitely shoot at them.
Certainly a lot of chatter. I don't know,
Okay.
a couple of questions. I think
Sure.
you've answered most of them. There was some talk about. I know we had one of our attendees from the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. And
Sure.
I remember, earlier Tyler and I were kind of joking about the fact that he has a background in student conduct from when he was here as a student. And when he mentioned earlier, the cool thing is I get to say I play video games for a living. But I think I can only imagine that you spend a ton of time on the rules and the framework to make this sport safe and accommodating for folks. So I don't know if you want to just talk to that here and maybe some final thoughts on that.
Oh, go ahead, Tyler. You led all those meetings, man.
Well, it's such a huge thing, right? I mean, we set out and said, we want to be the league for Division I schools. Obviously, that comes with a lot of things that have to happen underneath that, and a significantly higher level of sophistication than just putting together an event. So we spent a lot of time looking at the last century of history in college athletics. Understanding that system, looking at where they did really well, where there were failures. There's lots of criticisms in that system about how minorities are involved in it, how they handle really, intense subjects like that, as well as things like sexual assault and all these things that you don't really think about until they happen. So for us, as we were going through all the different rules and getting feedback from everybody, there was a combination of what do the schools need to feel secure and the ability of us to execute on what they expect from us? How do we keep the students safe? And then how do we make sure that the institutions, once they figure things out, are kind of held to a standard that is required to make everything work in the way that we want it to? So a big focus over the last couple of months and going into the next year is really continuing to build out all these policies and looking at those blind spots that we have. And even going back to what we were talking about in terms of the accessibility and inclusiveness component is understanding that because we're a system now, that we're creating an environment that is equitable and balanced, and really focused on understanding how we can serve students in the best possible way. And that's like a whole conversation on its own because there's so much depth and consideration to it. But as you're talking about, the ability to work through a lot of that in RIT from the administrative side, as well as obviously going through a lot of that as a student, kind of helps to balance, what's the reality of what we have to deal with sort of the more philosophical or theoretical approach that we come up with in the right policies.
Yeah, it feels like there could be a whole nother webinar just on that subject.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we have hit the 2 o'clock hour. Chad and Tyler, I want to thank you so much for doing this webinar for us, and I know the alumni on the webinar really appreciate it. So if anybody else has follow-up questions for Chad or Tyler, you can direct those to ritalum@rit.edu, and we can relay those to you. You can see a full. Also, all audience members will receive an email from us in about a week with a link to today's webinar recording. So this will be recorded and posted out there for folks to watch. You can see a full listing of upcoming virtual events like today's webinar at rit.edu/alumni. We have several each week. We hope you'll join us for those. So to exit the webinar, all you need to do is simply close your live stream window, and please let us know what you thought of the webinar through a brief survey that you will receive via an email. So again, Chad and Tyler, thank you so much for your time today. really enjoyed this. I think based on all of the comments and feedback we've seen in the chat, I think a lot of people really enjoyed this. So with that, have a great end to your week and a wonderful weekend, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you
for having us.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody.
Take care.